So today the Championship fixtures have just been released, and what I thought we'd do in today's video is go over each Championship club, look at their first 5 fixtures and decide who has the toughest start to the season. As we all know, getting off to a good start can be absolutely crucial in this league as competitive as the Championship, building up a bit of momentum. I'm interested to know what you guys make of your fixture list. Out of your first 5 fixtures, how many points do you realistically see yourselves getting? And as well as that, what away days are you most looking forward to this season? Coming up for Preston, I've got to say, I'm quite looking forward to Luton away. Blackburn's always a very good one for us as well, but there should be some good ones this season. So if you do go on to enjoy the video, make sure you leave a like. It is always massively appreciated. But without further ado, let's hop into looking at some of these fixtures. So we'll go through the league in alphabetical order, starting out with Barnsley, and they have a bit of a mixed bag to start the season. First of all, going up against Fulham at home, not an easy test, but being at home at Oakwell, I feel like there'll be a good atmosphere for that one for their return to the Championship. The 2 games which really stand out to me there, though, are against Charlton and Luton, both home games, both against sides who have been promoted. That'll really gauge where Barnsley are at coming up to the Championship compared to the other sides who have come up. So you feel like those 2 games, they're winnable for a side like Barnsley and could go on to determine how they do for the rest of the year. We spoke about Birmingham quite a lot on the channel recently, with them recently firing Gary Monk, and I don't know, with everything that's gone on so far over the summer, I know there is still a long way to go until the season does eventually start, but I feel like this really will hold them back. There'll be a bit of a sour atmosphere still hanging over the club, and for that reason, I get the impression that Birmingham may get off to quite a slow start to the season. First of all, going away against Brentford, not an easy game. I think there is a bit between the Brentford and Birmingham fans as well, with Birmingham signing quite a few Brentford players in recent years, so that'll be a good atmosphere. Then against Bristol City, Nottingham Forest, 2 tough games to follow that up. I think Birmingham could struggle in their first few games, to be honest. I think the Blackburn have also got a fairly tough start to the season. Being at home at Charlton on the first day is not a bad opener for them, but after that it does get pretty tough. Fulham away, Middlesbroug at home, Hull away, who had a very good home record last season, and then Cardiff at home to finish that group of 5 fixtures off. Not an easy start for Blackburn, but if I'm being completely honest, I think that Blackburn's best performances last season probably came against some of the sides who were battling it out near the top of the Championship. Typically the games which Blackburn slipped up in last season were against the sides, you know, battling it out near the relegation zone, so perhaps for that reason Blackburn could actually start fairly well to this season. They tend to implement their game plan better against some of those sides battling it up further up the league, so for that reason Blackburn might not get off to a bad start despite having some pretty tough fixtures. I think that Brentford have got a pretty mixed bag to start the season off. We've already discussed the game they have against Birmingham. That one should be a good game to open the season with. After that, facing Middlesbrough, Hull, Leeds and Charlton. Brentford against Leeds, always a fascinating game to watch. Both sides play some really good football. I think that could be quite an end-to-end high scoring game. Bristol City have got quite an interesting start to the year. They kicked their season off against Leeds at Ashton Gate. Of course, with Leeds being in town, that game is going to be on Sky. It's on the Sunday, so I mean, what can you expect? After that game against Leeds, they got Birmingham away, QPR at home, Derby away and Hull City away. So 3 away games in there for their first 5 games of the season. To be fair, I think Bristol City usually do start the seasons off fairly well. It's just towards the end they tend to tail off a little bit. And on the last day of the season, they face Preston North End, and fair to say Bristol City don't have the best record against us, so they'll be hoping going into the last weekend they won't be needing to pick up all 3 points. On Cardiff's return to the Championship, their first opener is against Wigan Athletic away from home. Looking at that list for Cardiff, I don't think their start is too bad, to be completely honest. I think they got the chance there to build up a little bit of momentum. They got Wigan, Luton, Reading, Huddersfield and Blackburn. That game against Huddersfield will be quite an interesting one to gauge where both sides are at this early stage of the season. But on paper, looking at Cardiff's squads compared to everyone else, I think that all those 5 games are fairly winnable for them, if I'm being honest. Charlton kicked their Championship campaign off with an away trip to Ewood Park against Blackburn Rovers. I don't think Charlton have the best record at Ewood Park there, without a win there in the last 3 meetings with Blackburn. Home form's going to be very important for Charlton this season. The home games they got in that first 5 buncher against Stoke, Nottingham Forest and Brentford, I think all those games will be fairly open actually, and then they got an away trip thrown in there against Barnsley, which we mentioned earlier, could be a massive game for both sides that, and that'll really be a gauge for a lot of people as to where these sides are at the moment. Derby still find themselves in a bit of an awkward situation with Frank Lampard. Will he stay, will he go? If a new manager's coming into the job though, I mean, he's got a tough start in his hands, I must say. The first 5 fixtures, Huddersfield, Swansea, Stoke, Bristol City and West Brom, and then going into September after that, it doesn't get much easier for them. They've then got Brentford, Cardiff, Leeds and Birmingham, so all the sides that Derby are coming up against in the first 2 months of the season, I'd be expecting all of them to be finishing in the top half, with maybe Birmingham being a bit of an exception to that depending on how they do without Gary Monk, but even so, that's a really tough start for Derby to this season. It'll be interesting to see how they ride out those few fixtures because, like I say, that is a tough start. And then I think the opposite probably applies to Fulham. They've got a fairly decent start to Championship life. I think they're being eased in quite well there. They got an away trip against Barnsley, home against Blackburn, Huddersfield, Millwall, and then Nottingham Forest. Away against Barnsley, there may be a potential bit of a banana skin, you know, with Barnsley just being promoted. They'll still be riding high on that promotion. And it's another game which I can see being fairly open. Fulham will probably go into it as the favourites, but with Barnsley being promoted and at home, you'd be foolish to write them off from that one. In terms of Huddersfield's fixtures, the first two games which I'm immediately drawn to is the home game against Fulham and then the away trip immediately followed against Cardiff City. Facing both other relegated clubs so early on in the season will give us a bit of an indicator as to where those three sides rank against each other. Before those two games, they've got a home game against Derby to kick things off and then an away trip against QPR, and then to round it off, they've got a home game against Reading. There's still quite a lot of unknowns about Hull City. When I'm recording, they're still without a manager. Last season, it really was their home form which propelled them up the league. So looking at those home fixtures they've got in the first 5 games, they've got a home game against Reading, Blackburn, and Bristol City. They'll be looking to take full advantage of those games. The 2 away games they got against Swansea and Brentford, I feel like those 2 will be very open. Looking at Leeds' fixtures, I'm convinced they're going to come flying out the blocks for this season. In August and September, their fixtures, they don't look too bad if I'm being completely honest. I think in October things start to get a little bit tougher for Leeds, but the first 2 months of the season, Leeds have got a chance to go ahead and put a bit of a statement down like they did last season. Bristol City away is obviously going to be a tough game, going away to Ashton Gate, and Bristol City do tend to start seasons fairly well. And then after that, they got Forest, Wigan, Brentford, and Stoke. So Leeds fans, how many points do you realistically see yourselves getting from those opening 5 fixtures? Luton have had a bit of a stinker in terms of their first 5 fixtures. They've got Middlesbrough at home, Cardiff away, West Brom at home, and Sheffield Wednesday away as their first 4. And then to finish off, they've got an away trip against Barnsley. Look at those first 4 fixtures especially. None of those are easy games. But Luton could play on the fact that they are the underdog going into those games. You know, they'll still be riding on the high coming up from League One as champions. And then that game against Barnsley will be a tasty one as well. And it would be fair to argue that Middlesbrough probably have one of the best starts to the season in my view, at least on paper. As we all know how unpredictable the Championship can be, maybe that could be completely flipped on its head, but they've got games against Luton, Brentford, Blackburn, Wigan, and Millwall. I mean, all those games are winnable for a side like Borough in my view, so for Jonathan Woolgate to get off to a good start to the season, that'll be absolutely massive for them. And if they can take full advantage of that fairly decent start to the season, who knows, you know, they could build up a bit of momentum and then carry that through for the rest of the season. So I'm sure that Jonathan Woolgate, looking at those fixtures, he'll be fairly happy with that, I think. Although I'm not sure Millwall fans will be feeling the same. Their first 5 games are really tricky in my view. They've got a home game against Preston, which I'm looking forward to, West Brom away, Sheffield Wednesday at home, Fulham away, and Middlesbrough away. None of those games easy by any stretch of the imagination. Going up against all sorts of sides who I'd imagine would be finishing top half this season, and yes, I am including Preston in that. But I think looking at those first 5 fixtures, the away games especially could be some tricky ones. West Brom, Fulham, and Borough away in the first 5, all really tough games to start out with. Forest are another side who I feel have quite a tough start to the season. West Brom at home and then Leeds away. You know, there is the potential that Forest could lose both their games in that run, and then Martin O'Neill, you know, will be put under more pressure from the fans, I'm sure. After that, it eases up a little bit with Birmingham at home and Charlton away, but then they finish off that group of 5 fixtures with an away trip to Craven Cottage. So, Forest fans, let me know down below what you make of that first 5 fixtures. I think you've got a fairly tough running compared to everyone else. And then we get to Preston North End. With Preston, I'm not gonna lie, I'm fairly happy with our start to the season. We got Millwall away, Wigan at home, Swansea away, Stoke at home, and then Sheffield Wednesday at home. Compared to our start to last season, we were abysmal at the start of last season. We were bottom of the league after 11 games. We couldn't keep a clean sheet to save our lives. We were absolutely dreadful, but in fairness, the sides we were facing at the start of the season were of a high calibre, and we do have quite a few tough games sprinkled in there, but I don't get the feeling that it will be quite as tough as it was last season. At least I'm hoping not, and hopefully we don't get an injury crisis either. But a home game against Wigan on the second day of the season is one which I'm really looking forward to, especially if we get a repeat of last year's 4-0 victory. QPR are going to look to hit the reset button for 2019. This year they've only picked up 3 wins. The way they ended last year was all a bit of a disaster, really. But now under Mark Warburton, the club does slowly start to be looking like it's heading in a different direction, and the start they had this season, not the worst I've seen so far. Stoke away and Bristol City away, 2 tough games there, but the home games they've got against Huddersfield, Swansea and Wigan, all winnable for QPR. Reading are another one of those clubs who I do feel as if have a bit of a stinker for their start to the season. They got Sheffield Wednesday at home, Hull away, Cardiff at home, West Brom away, and then Huddersfield away. All 5 of those games I feel like are really tricky for Reading, especially with the position they are in at the moment with the sort of soft transfer embargo. They need need to be selling players, and I'm not sure, with the current state they are in at the moment compared to everyone else in the Championship, I'm not sure how prepared they will be come the first day of the season. The away games especially I think will be really tough. You know, Hull at home last season were very good. Each of those 5 games are really tricky in my view for different reasons, and so Reading are going to have to be prepared at the start. And in complete contrast to that, I've got to say Sheffield Wednesday have a very favourable start to the season, apart from that last game they've got there against Preston away, which will be a tough game, I'm telling Wednesday fans now. Looking at their fixtures though, they've got Reading away, Barnsley at home, Millwall away and Luton at home. From those 4, they're all very winnable for Wednesday in my view, and then they got a game against Deepdale, Preston away, which should be a tasty one. Last season we drew that one 3-3 right at the end of the season. I'm sure after Steve Bruce saw that fixture list though, he was fairly happy with the start they got. I mentioned it in my last video, but I'm really not sure where I stand on Stoke at the moment. I was reading through some of the comments before I record this video, and Stoke are a bit of a mixed bag. Some people are really thinking they'll have a vast improvement from last season and make the top 6. Other people aren't so sure. Looking at the fixtures for their first 5 matches, it's a bit of a mixed bag they've got in there. They get to test themselves against some quite different sides actually. In the opening 5, they got QPR, Charlton, Derby, Preston and Leeds. I'm interested to see how Stoke get on the road this season. Charlton away and Preston away, not easy by any stretch of the imagination. I feel like Swansea have done alright for their first 5 fixtures if I'm being honest. Hull at home, Derby away, Preston at home, QPR away and Birmingham at home. 5 decent fixtures to start the year off. I think at times throughout last season it was their away form which let them down, so those 2 games against Derby and QPR will be an interesting one to gauge how that's improved going into this season. And the home game against Preston should be an interesting battle. West Brom start their season off with an away trip to the City ground against Nottingham Forest. After that their fixtures ease up a little bit. They've got Millwall at home, Luton away, Reading at home and then Derby County away. Not the worst start in the world for West Brom, bit of a mixed bag in there. I'm really interested to see how everyone does going up against Luton away this season. Despite them themselves having a bit of a tough start, I think they will give some of the big boys they play early on a bit of a run for their money, so that's one to look out for sure. And then to finish things off, we have Wigan Athletic. If I remember correctly, I think that Wigan started last season really well actually. They tailed off a little bit towards the middle of the season, but looking at their first 5 fixtures, not an easy start to the season. They've got Cardiff at home, Preston away, Leeds at home, Middlesbrough away and QPR away. Away games really were sort of the Achilles heel of Wigan last season. You know, they couldn't get a win away from home to save their lives at some points. And the 2 home games they start their season off with aren't too much either against Cardiff and Leeds United, 2 sides who I'd expect to be battling it around near the top of the table. And of course the away trip to Preston, I'm very much looking forward to that one at Deepdale so early on this time. But guys, there you have it. There was every Championship club's first 5 fixtures for the upcoming season. So realistically, how many points do you see your club getting from those first 5 games, and are you happy with your fixture list? Also coming up tonight, we've got the first round draw for the Carabao Cup. Who would you like to see your club being drawn against? As a Preston fan, I would absolutely love it to get a draw against Blackpool. But like I said, that will now wrap it up for this video. So if you did go on to enjoy, make sure you leave a like. It is always massively appreciated. Make sure you subscribe for a bit of regular Championship content. But apart from that, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.